All right, for the next part, I'm going to do something I've never done, which is like essentially do this in real time. I usually, I've been on Zapier for like a decade, maybe a little longer. So I've never really like done this, but I think this is kind of interesting to me as a builder, someone who just likes working on interesting problems to solve. So this reference one idea was actually a problem that I've had previously, where it's just so difficult to reference check um, in a thorough way, and it's like you're not going to have to it. You either do it or you don't. And so I rolled the dice too many times based off of the fact that you know wasn't able to do efficient reference checking. And so essentially, like how I want this to be is I'm going to write this initial prompt, maybe do the outlines, and then I'll start breaking it down over time. But this is kind of the hardest part, I think, because I know what my end state needs to be. It essentially needs to be an application that allows employers to log in, create a profile or enterprise if you need multiple profiles. It needs to be able to bill people. It needs to be able to essentially have an employer load up their job description and the title, and then probably somehow um, we need to develop a set of questions that would help someone understand that would help a human being understand if there's a candidate. How can I put this? We need to develop a set of questions from the job description that will allow a human being to look at answers from someone else who knows the candidate and say this person is a good fit or it is a bad fit. And so once we distill those questions, we will essentially uh, plug it into an AI, and then that AI will be trained on those questions and also probably just good answers, anyways. And then we'll probably go to Twilio and set up a phone number so that eventually what'll happen is a a reference. If you think of the end state, an employer will say, "Hey, we do reference checks. Give us the phone numbers or emails of your references." The candidate will do so. The employer will then contact or reach out to those people, probably via email, preferably, and say, "Hey, we're doing a reference check on X candidate. They are looking at a role. Can you call this number at your earliest convenience? We would really like these reference checks to be in by whatever Friday if it's a Monday." Those references will call in, and they won't know it's AI. They will essentially be greeted by a voice that says, "Hey, doing reference checks for this role. Would love for you to give us more information about the person that you're calling about. We're just going to ask a few questions. Can you just answer them?" Essentially, um, they'll answer the questions. That phone call will be transcribed. It will then be graded according to the job description, with highlights and notes and things of that sort. Uh, from there, that will be delivered to in a summary form to the employer or the hiring manager of the employer, whoever's logged into the application, and then they will have they'll have the raw transcriptions. Might be able to give them the audio, though that sounds like it'd be more expensive. And they'll also have like the highlights or grading rubric. Um, and then that's how they can make transcriptions. So they essentially didn't do anything but send the references in email, which we can also probably automate at the end of the day. Um, and then we probably won't want to automate that, but we could probably automate that. And instead of spending 10 to 15 minutes per reference per candidate, so 3 references per candidate minimum, and then you would have essentially 3 candidates. Probably you're getting to a round of 3 candidates. So yeah, that's 90 minutes that you're saving However, because of bad hires, when you don't reference check thoroughly or reference check enough candidates, you usually minimize your pool a bit more than you probably should. So with this application, you could actually probably move 10 candidates to the reference point, um, which gives you a little bit more room to figure out who actually is a good idea, because you might have someone that you would have cut off past candidate 3 that might have been candidate 6 or 7 that's actually the best fit for your role, and that's where bad hires come into play. And so, as we talked about before, it's about 15% I think was the estimate. So for a $50,000 salary, you're losing, I don't know, I'm terrible at mental math, but you're losing $15,000-$20,000 worth of value every single time you make a bad hire. That obviously scales up with the more expensive hires. Seems high. So that's kind of in a nutshell what we're shooting for, that end state. So as you saw with the basics, you need to figure out your end state before you even start like trying to prompt this thing, because otherwise you're going to be essentially feeling around a room blind, following the walls, and then bumping into crap. And who wants to do that? So you might as well just map out the room beforehand, so when the lights are turned off, you know exactly where you're going. And that's essentially what I just did for this application. Take that for what you will. It'll help you a lot when it comes to building these things.